Hey, hello everyone and welcome to tonight's edition of Veganic Gardeners Question Time. My name's Kerri and we've just been joined by Jay, the collie, apparently. And I'd like to thank Dan at Vegan Organic Network for inviting me back again to host this evening's Question Time. I work for Viva, the vegan charity. And for the past year, I've been heading up a project called Viva Farming. Viva Farming's aim is to build a network to help farmers transition. So what we're looking at is how can we put in place what's needed for farmers to be able to make those steps. So what do we need financially, environmentally? What do we need social support, for example? So I've been doing a lot of research over the last year, and it's become apparent that we need to be working together because people are doing many different projects in other organizations here and there on farming and vegan farming, veganic farming. And what we at Viva Farming aim to do is to be that central place so that farmers can come to us and we can send them to some of the great people who are working in the field. So yes, thanks Dan for inviting me back again. It's a pleasure to be here. We're going to introduce our panel now. So our first specialist this evening is Aranya. Aranya is one of Britain's leading permaculture teachers. Aranya, would you like to introduce yourself, please? Tell me a bit about your background and what you're up to at the moment. You're muted.
Muted, yes. Yes, we've been out in the dark finishing off a compost toilet shed that we're building. So that's the exciting thing at the moment. Summer has been very busy with teaching permaculture, and now I'm trying to finish my book once the compost loo is finished. But yeah, very exciting.
I've never seen someone so excited by a compost loo before. That's fantastic. Okay, thank you. And our second panelist tonight is Jonathan Barker. Jonathan has managed a forest garden in Essex for the last 11 years. Jonathan, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hello. So thanks very much for having me on. My name's Jonathan Barker. We've been converting a monoculture, previously intensively managed 6-acre field into a forest garden in deepest, darkest Essex, one of the driest parts of the country. And we've planted out with around 4,500 trees, mainly fruiting or nuts or berry trees, which are beneficial to us as humans, but also to a range of wildlife. Because the idea is to show how you can grow organically and veganically, and also greatly benefit nature and wildlife, as well as producing enormous range of products for eating, for materials, for medicine, for well-being, so on and so on. So yeah, I'm passionate about forest gardening.
Well, exciting stuff, and I look forward to hearing more about the type of things that you grow this evening. Thank you. So let's move to our next panelist. Anton Rosenfeld is a research officer at Garden Organic. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, it's nice to be back on the programme again. Yeah, I've worked at Garden Organic for about 20 years. More recently, I've been doing quite a lot of their training programmes, going out around the country, telling people about composting and organic food growing. And I also manage their citizen science programme. So we do lots of little trials in people's back gardens on organic growing and soil fertility and care.
So yeah, we've got a great range of speakers this evening to answer your questions. I feel composting is something that's probably going to come up quite a bit. But before we start, we've got an event announcement from the Vegan Organic Network. So there's going to be a screening of the VON at the Martinsact Bicentenary Anniversary Conference in 2022. So that was this year. So that will be this year on the 4th of December. I don't know many of you know about the Martins Act. It was actually a landmark piece of legislation in animal welfare. It was the first really UK legislation in animal welfare in 1822 when Parliament passed the Cruel Treatment of Cattle Act, and the statute became named as the Martins Act after its sponsor, the MP and animal rights campaigner Richard Martin, who today I actually learned was nicknamed Humanity Dick at the time, and he was famous because he brought a donkey into Parliament, so quite an interesting man. So it's only been protected, while it only protected a limited number of species from certain types of abuse, it was the first time that legislation was actually passed in the interest of animals. And that's why VON really took part in the conference and had it at its heart. And they produced a final part of the conference called Visions for a Cruelty-Free Future. So you can visit veganorganic.net for more information on how to watch and it's going to be screened on Sunday at 7 p.m. free on YouTube. And we've got another announcement for you as well. So as part of Stock Free Farming's webinar series, don't know if many of you know Stock Free Farming, Rebecca in Scotland runs it, and they're doing some fantastic work transitioning farmers away from using animals and into other forms of agriculture, including veganic growing. And Ian Tolhurst, VON's own Ian Tolhurst, will be speaking about the natural methods of pest control and self-sufficient soil fertility as part of Stock Free Farming's Beyond the Possible, Expanding the Boundaries of Farming and Crofting series. So you can catch that this Thursday evening at 7 p.m. and you can register to attend at Stock Free Farming Beyond the Impossible. I think we can put the link in the chat. We can do that while we're going on. Apologies for the dogs, they do like to play fight. Okay, so let's, dogs, okay, calm down. Yeah, they'll calm down. Okay, so let's get on with our first question, shall we? Okay, so the first question is from John. He says, hi team, have you started volunteering on a community allotment which is on a former bowling green? The soil is sandy. They have used green manures, but the crop size is not great, and have ordered mushroom-based compost to go on the beds. The question, how to regenerate a bed on sandy soil when rain washes all the nutrients away? Anyone like to take that question?
Yeah, I'll say a few ideas.
Yep, go ahead, Anton.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing some of the right things. Obviously, building up the organic matter is going to be absolutely key. We had the same problem at Garden Organic, really. We've got a sandy loam, and we were just like, all the nutrients are getting washed out every winter. So having those green manures growing over winter is really, really crucial. You probably also want to have some green manures for slightly longer than the winter, if possible, if you can take some of it out of production so that you've got a longer fertility building period, because green manures are not actually going to fix much nitrogen over the winter when it's cold. So you've got to watch it a bit with the mushroom compost as well, because sometimes the spent mushroom compost has actually not got that so many nutrients in it, if it's the mushrooms have sort of used up all the nutrients, and it can also be quite alkaline. So really building up that organic matter. Green waste compost is quite a good way. It sort of slowly builds up the organic matter content and the nutrient content. It's got slow release nutrients in it. So all those things, it is quite a long process as well. We found it took sort of several years really before we were really getting the yields up. But after a while, you know, so we were actually getting quite good yields of brassicas on a sandy soil. So it is possible to do it.
Excellent. And anyone else like to add anything? Jonathan,
So,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Was that Jonathan?
Yeah, that was Jonathan.
Okay. So basically, yeah, if you obviously anything like say mentioned about the green waste, leaf mulch is really good. Either rock the leaf mulch down in big piles and then add it to that soil. That's a free way of doing it. Adding, you know, choppings off of your hedgerows. So, you know, cut that up, you know, the small leafy ends of those of the hedges. That's very good. So mulching it, you know, allowing that extra fertility to get into that sandy soil. Like I say, it takes several years to get the soil into a reasonable condition if it is very sandy and leaching a lot of the moisture and nutrients. But that will all help as well.
I do have one question, and maybe this is going into sort of conspiracy theory territory here, but somebody did tell me that not all mushroom composts are technically vegan. Some aren't. Is that true?
Well, one thing I would caution is that insecticides are often used to kill, because flies love mushrooms. So if it's organic mushroom compost, then that's obviously not going to be an issue. But a lot of mushroom compost does have that problem, I would say. I would be cautious myself.
Okay. Anyone else like to add anything? Okay, maybe we can move on to the next question. Okay, so our next question comes from Robin. So he says, hello panel. They say hello panel. I grew quite a surplus of various veg at my allotment, most of which went to friends. I hope to grow even more next year, so I'm wondering if it is legal for me to sell produce outside my house. Do you have any other ideas how I can make a bit of money from surplus? This is a great question, especially with the cost of living crisis. Anyone have any expertise I can add here? Jonathan?
Okay, so we sell some of our produce outside our house as well as at events. So as far as I know, if you're an occasional seller, as far as I know, it is legally fine. You know, there's no issues if you're just selling up to a few £1,000s worth of produce outside your house, or a few £100 is perfectly fine. No problem with that. Also, you could potentially have a stall at events like car boot sales or community events, village shows. Places like that is a great place to sell produce. There's apparently an organisation called Big Barn, and you can sell for I think it's this app called Crop for the shop, where you could sell stuff through that app. Yeah, there's lots of different places you could sell your produce, and it's a great thing to do with excess produce, as well as swap it with other people trading it, or giving it to neighbours, friends and family as well.
Go back to the barter system. I like it.
Yep.
Aranya, did you want to come in here?
Well, just to say, it's also a really nice way to create community, because then you start to meet the people who are wanting your veg, and maybe you can swap some seeds with them at some point. And I'm aware of a place where my partner's sister lives, that they've got a little village down in the village. It's just a pile of boxes really with some vegetables in, and people go and put money in an honesty box. And we used to have two guys down our road in the village we used to live in Exmouth, who were competing with each other for having the best veg. They were always the ones at the village show that had the best veg. And so there was all this competition, so they would get the prices down and it was just really nice to see until one of them retired. But and of course on the Channel Islands you have this idea of hedge veg, so you go around and there's always, there's boxes, you see them everywhere on top of people's walls with little honesty boxes, and just put some money in. So there's a risk of people maybe not paying, but I think that's the fact that it happens suggests that that's not necessarily an issue in those places. It might be more difficult in the middle of a city, for instance, but if you're the sticks a bit or in a village, then I would say the community that comes from it can be as important as the financial income you get, because that's about the people that support you and so on. So
yes, Anton?
Yeah, I'd go along with the others saying it does create a nice sense of community. I'd say the other thing that's quite nice to do is you could sell off your excess plants if you've grown a few too many plants, because often people don't think about sowing their plants in time, and then when they find some tomato plants sort of ready to go, then they're sort of really appreciative of that. So that can work quite well. And not everyone's got a space to raise plants as well, so you're sort of doing your bit for the community. Just going to say one thing as well is that you shouldn't really say that stuff is organic without it being certified. You can sort of say it's grown sustainably, but you just have to be a little bit careful about that. Although probably if you're just putting it outside your house, people probably not going to take too much notice.
Excellent. And just to add as well, I've just moved to a very small village in France, and one of the benefits here has been that my neighbours, they sell their veg, their fruit and veg on a Friday morning, and it's a great way of actually meeting people. So I really think that community aspect is vital. I remember looking into what you can sell food-wise in the UK, and I think vegetables do fall under the same sort of category as jams and things like that. There are certain foodstuffs that you can actually sell outside your house, just as long as you're not selling it on a mass commercial basis. So it's worth looking into. Okay. Should we move on to the next question? Yeah, excellent. Okay. Okay, so the third question says, hi, for the first time I grew, now do we say quinoa or quinoa? The debate's up this year. The plants were huge and beautiful, but processing the seed to use in the kitchen was difficult and time consuming to produce only a small amount. Do the team have any advice? Or is it one of those crops that is not worth the effort? Are there any other crops the team have tried and given up on? Who would like to go first? Jonathan, you got there first.
Yeah, I mean, we actually buy, I call it quinoa, but yeah, quinoa, I don't think it matters, potato. We buy it, there's a local grower in Colchester, not too far from us in Essex. So we buy it from them because when we try growing a small amount of it, yeah, it's you don't get a lot from your crop. I mean, other plants we've grown before, things like goji berries, they take up a lot of room, but you don't get that many berries from my experience anyway. So yeah, some things, if you got the space, it's good to grow a very diverse, wide range of crops. But yeah, certain ones, especially if you've got a smaller amount of space, it's maybe best to give it a miss and just buy it as locally as you can.
Anton?
Yeah, I can sort of add to my crops, which I don't think are that worth growing, if that's helpful. We tried growing lentils once, and we got a good crop. The plants grew well, and we got sort of quite a few sort of lentils out of them, but it was just a real faff to process it on a small scale. It took absolutely ages, and when I looked up the yields, actually don't really get that much per square meter. You do need to grow it on a bigger scale. So it was interesting to grow it, but I don't think I would do it again.
I could just say that there are some crops that it's just easier to let people have processing equipment do that job for you, and you can buy UK quinoa. Wakeland's agroforestry in East Anglia have been trialing it. I don't know if Hobmadods work with them, so I don't know if they got to the point where Hobmadods are now selling UK quinoa, but that's you know, that's a company worth supporting because they're growing beans in the UK for us to eat in the UK, and yeah, it's just lowering the footprint. And also, if you buy the beans, you can usually just plant them in your garden and grow them yourself if you want to. But yeah, quinoa, lentils, they're very faffy to do by hand. So
yes, Hodmadods do sell quinoa. I like it. It's much nicer quinoa. They do in fact. Yes, and I've had a discussion recently with Ian Tolhurst about what pulses we can actually grow in the UK. And he's very vocal about the fact we need a lot of research and development, but with just all the money put into it, we could actually grow quite a lot in this country. We just need to do that development stuff beforehand. Okay, should we move on to the next question? Okay, so the next question says, hi, can you give me advice on buying an ethical Christmas? Now, I'm going to guess it's Christmas tree, if there is such a thing. And this comes from Joe.
oh, well, I read it as ethical Christmas because, you know, people do spend a lot of money on Christmas. I think if you're going to avoid waste, don't buy people stuff that they're just going to throw away. So it's nice to buy plants and those kind of things. My brother bought me a sponsorship at Fleece Haven. Do you know Fleece Haven, which is a sheep sanctuary? So this is one of the sheep that I sponsored, which was a really nice present. I wouldn't have thought of it. And he just says, this is your present this year. And I thought, great. I can't throw it away. It's supporting something very important, lovely. But yes, I mean, for me, plant seeds, but I wouldn't be buying them for people that I think they would just leave them, waste them, let them die. So it's ideally, it's just don't buy presents at all. Just be, you know, bring your presents. But anyway, that's Christmas trees. I don't know. Over to anyone else.
Yes, Anton?
I suppose I'm going to say, if you get buy a membership for Garden Organics Heritage Seed Library, then people can choose sort of unusual seeds that they like. So, and you're supporting the conservation of unusual vegetable seeds. So it's a shameless plug for them.
Jonathan?
Yes, so in relation to Christmas trees, we actually do we do sell some living, we call them living trees on our land. So we deliver them within the local area, and we dig them up with the roots. You know, and if they're only a few feet tall, they will usually survive if people plant them in their own gardens, and it helps raise funds for our project. Also, obviously, supporting Garden Organic, supporting the Vegan Organic Network, even with a subscription, or obviously getting their magazine. Also supporting, there's other organisations that some of you may have heard of, the Vegan Land Movement. They're starting to buy ex-animal agriculture land, and they're rewilding it and turning it into community space, community orchards. They're a great organisation. They own about 4 or 5 plots of land now, mainly in the West Country. So that's a really good place to give a donation to on behalf of somebody as a Christmas present. And then the other thing is obviously make chutney for all your friends and family from your produce. Obviously that's a good present. And buy as local as possible from local trades and crafts people. That's always one of the best things to do.
Okay, great. So we've touched on Christmas. So what will the next question be? Okay, so the next question is from Bob. Hello team. When digging out the compost from one of my large plastic compost bins, a rat comes scurrying out and then back in. I realised it must be living in the bin. I decided to leave the compost and the bin. Any advice on what I should do? I've had the same situation as well. So what's the best advice? Oh, I think it was Anton.
Okay.
It's not a competition, but yeah, when we get asked this quite a lot about rats in compost bins, I mean, I suppose the first thing is how. I mean, rats again often going to live in compost, and they're probably not going to do too much harm, but I guess the thing is really sort of how to prevent them getting there in the first place. So I'll say the obvious things: avoid putting sort of any sort of cooked foods on there, because that will really attract rats. Visiting your bin quite often as well. Rats generally not so keen on people, so if you've got your bin sort of tucked away in a corner and never visit it, then you're more likely to get rats building a nest in it. There are also types of compost bins which are rat proof. So there's one that's called a green Joanna, which has got a solid sort of plastic mesh base on it where the rats can't get in. They will, if they're really determined, chew their way through it, but it is quite a deterrent for them to get in. So those sort of things will sort of reduce the chances of rats getting into your compost.
Excellent. Any more advice? Aranya, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, let's say, so here we have a hot bin, so you can buy them, but there's people showing you how to DIY them on YouTube. But the hot bin's very nice design. It's made of car bumper material, so it looks like polystyrene, but the idea is it's, instead of having a large volume of compost to make heat, the insulation means that you get heat in there. It's hot bin, and the compost flows down through the system, and you've got a panel that you can take off the front and get the compost out, and there's a vent at the bottom, so the air travels up. It's the heat generates the warm air that rises, that draws the fresh air in. So it's, as long as it's made, the recipe's made well, it's aerobic as well, so it doesn't smell. And we just put all of our things that might attract rats in there, and then everything else just goes on the big pallet bins. So we're not putting anything in the system, as Anton says, that might attract rats in the first place. And we don't seem to really have a problem because they can't smell what's in the hot bin. They don't try and get in. And worms seem to, the compost worms seem to propagate very well in there and start to try and make their way out as well. And then the robin will be interested. So anyway, so they're fairly expensive, but they are very good, I would say. And we're very pleased with ours, but yeah.
Jonathan?
Yes, and the other thing, what we've done in the past, when I've been digging out some of my compost in the winter to mulch the various beds, we found various things living in them at the time. So we found a grass snake living in one of our compost heaps. So basically, we decided to leave that section or that area, mainly that compost heap alone. But we have multiple compost in areas on our land, so at least you've always got other options to go to get your fertility from and your mulching material. So if you're fortunate enough to have enough space, have multiple compost areas either in your garden or on your if you've got a bit of land or whatever, because it's good to have lots of different piles, and we have slow rotting compost heaps and faster rotting ones, and yeah, that all helps.
Yeah, maybe you make a very super attractive compost bin. This is especially for the rats, like a rat castle. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, so short and sweet. Hello, panel. What can I grow now, and how can I go about doing it? From John. Jonathan?
Okay, so obviously just in December, in just a couple of days time, so great time of year to start planting bare rooted fruit trees and nut trees, bushes and so on. It's a wonderful it's a great time of year. So if you've got space, perennial fruit and nut crops are some of the best things to grow because they give you back so much for your money, and unless you've grafted them yourself, it's cost very little, or done it from seed, obviously, which you can. So it's great thing to do. Also, collecting seeds like your apple seeds, pear seeds, the fridge for a few months in a bag in moss is a way to get them going, and then plant them, sow them late winter. So sowing fruit trees and seed is a great thing to start preparing to do at this time of year. And on the annual crops, you can obviously, kind of late October, November, probably still okay to do it now. Put in overwintering garlic, onions, aqua dulce, broad beans, winter salad crops. So there's lots of stuff you can still do at this time of year.
Excellent. Any other feedback on the question? Aranya, yes, go ahead.
I could add, you can be growing mushrooms sort of indoors. Things like shiitake, oyster mushrooms, they're quite fun. It actually would make quite a fun Christmas present to buy, say, something like a grow cycle fungus bag. It's a sort of grow kit where people just cut a hole in the bag and they grow. You moisten them, they grow. Or you can get a bit more complex and actually start to do much more of that for yourself. But we've got oyster mushrooms growing in this conservatory greenhouse at the moment, which are fruiting quite nicely. So that's another fresh crop you could have at the moment.
Anton?
I was just going to add, if people don't want to go outside, they could always do pea shoots or microgreens as well, just something very, very quick and easy, and get some fresh greens. But I think everyone else has really covered all the main things.
Great. Okay, so we've got another question as well. And on the topic of fruit trees. Oh, not this one. Okay, we've gone back in another order. Here we go. So, can you give me advice on how to prepare my garden for winter? I have a cherry tree and some raised beds. I haven't got anything growing at the moment, and that's from Angela.
There's a bit of an overlap with the last question, really, isn't there? But I would say, I mean, if you've got fruit trees, now is the time to be putting the guards back on, probably. So we take the tree guards off, spiral guards, off in the summer months, because they're not going to get nibbled during the spring and the summer when animals have plenty of other things to eat. So and that's important for the trees, because you don't want the dampness and the rotting, and ants seem to like to live, make little nests inside the guards. So this is the time to put them back on again before it gets cold enough and you forget about it. So that's one thing I would say to do, and check if you've got stakes and ties. Now is the time to be checking that, that maybe the ties need loosening off a little bit. Do the tree still need the stakes, maybe? But just having a look, checking your fruit trees over and making sure that they're ready for winter. So.
Anyone else? Jonathan, Anton, Jonathan, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, this time of year, getting your garden ready for winter, obviously, any pruning at this time of year of when going into dormancy, if you want to get a regular crop from them. Also mulching, this is the time of year, the winter, December, January time, get that compost, mulch with the compost, wood chip, leaf mulch, cuttings. So yeah, mulch the soil and build up the fertility over the winter in time for a lot of your spring sowings.
Anton?
Yeah, well, Jonathan said what I was going to say, really. Mulching's probably the best thing to do at the moment. I mean, in future years, if she can get in a bit early, she can sow some green manures in the sort of late summer, early autumn. Obviously, that's going to be really good for her soil.
Excellent. Okay, so we've got another question that I believe is also about fruit trees. Okay, so pruning fruit trees. How should I do it? And should I cut my raspberries right back? And then there's a supplementary question. Is it a good idea to gather leaves from my trees and put them under my apple and cherry tree? And that's from Ali. Who'd like to go first? Jonathan?
Okay.
You're quick off the mark.
Yes, so in relation to raspberries, depends if they're autumn or summer raspberries. So with your autumn raspberries, usually they're cut back later in the winter, around February, and cut the autumn raspberries all back to ground level, maybe just an inch, that's old-fashioned terms, or a few centimetres above the ground. With summer raspberries, usually after the cane that's fruited usually starts dying back after that's fruited. So that'd be autumn, early winter kind of time, probably early to mid-winter time. So you can cut back the one that's fruited, and it's obvious because it's starting to die off. And the new shoot that's going to fruit next year on the summer raspberries, leave that, don't touch that, and yeah, just leave that for next year, and then that gets pruned back the following year after it's fruited. With hard fruit trees, apples, pears, pomegranates, so on and so on, quince, so on, they can be pruned all in the winter time. So when the trees become dormant, so usually that's December to January. Some trees, if they're later fruiting apple trees, for example, they'll become dormant a bit latest. You might not want to prune them till maybe January, but some of the earlier fruiting varieties like Discovery, you'll want to prune them in December kind of time. It's a good time. And then with soft fruits, they're best to prune out late summer after they've fruited. That's the best time apparently to prune them, from the advice I've been given.
Fantastic, very comprehensive advice there. Anyone like to add anything?
On a slight aside, it's interesting because raspberries move. You're probably familiar if you've got raspberries or strawberries, they like to move. They're woodland edge, originally woodland edge species, so they like to keep ahead of the trees. And so if you're moving your raspberries, you're planting them and you're frustrated because they keep moving across your lawn, then what you want to do is to reorientate them so that your beds are more north-south, and then they'll move within the bed rather than move out of the bed. Does that make sense? Because they want to move, and the best way to keep them healthy is to let them move. So we have a north-south bed down the side of our front garden, and they all move towards the house. And then every couple of years we dig up the ones closest to the house and put them back at the other end. And so they're on this sort of conveyor belt of just being happy raspberries, and we don't have that issue, and we're not having to constantly move them. So just, if that's helpful to anybody.
Certainly practical. Anton, go ahead.
I was just going to add to the raspberries. Sometimes people inherit some raspberries and they're not sure whether they're summer or autumn ones. That's the easiest thing really, is just always cut down the bits which you can see where it's already fruited. That's the easiest thing to do. So if you're not sure, you sort of leave the ones which look sort of new and green on there. And I mean, if it's an autumn fruiting variety, they'll all have fruits on them, so you'd cut them all down. So that's the way to sort of tell the difference between them. They asked the question about the leaves as well. I mean, if the leaves come from the own tree, I would tend to say it's all right to leave them, because that's what would happen naturally. But I probably wouldn't want to pile up sort of loads of extra leaves around the tree. I'd take them away and use them to make leaf mold.
Right, anything else? Okay. So do we have time for an extra question tonight? Yes. Okay. Okay. What surprised me with an extra question are our tech bodies behind the scenes.
Okay, we've got an extra question for you here. What outside plants will flower over the Christmas period? Anybody on that one? Did you get that? What outside plants will flower over the Christmas period? Jonathan?
Okay, if you're talking about, well, perennials like winter jasmine, you get lovely colour from winter jasmine. Late winter, you get primroses. The flowers on primroses are actually edible, so great for adding to your salads. Hellebores are another one commonly grown in gardens. They're lovely for flowering over the Christmas period. The Christmas rose, I think, is one of their other names. Trying to think what else flowers over the Christmas period. I mean, obviously ivy's great for the nectar. Eucalyptus trees give a late winter blossom, which is very good for bees for nectar. So yeah, there's a few different ones that flower over winter.
Yeah, we have periwinkle, vinca growing here, flowering at the moment as well. So.
And you've got the sort of mahonia bushes as well, and they'll be forming sort of nice fruits as well for the birds later on. So, and that's a pretty standard thing in most people's gardens.
Well, that's a nice question to end on. Positive flowering during the Christmas period. So it's been wonderful having our guest speakers here tonight, our panelists. I'd like to thank Aranya, Anton and Jonathan for answering your questions. Dan for allowing me to host the Gardener's Question Time again. If you want any more information about Vegan Organic Network, obviously it's at there's the slide, good, veganorganic.net. If you're interested in seeing Ian Tolhurst speak for stock-free farming, you can go to the stock-free farming website. So that's stockfreefarming.org, and you'll find all the details for that there. Don't forget the screening on Sunday that's going to take place in commemoration of the Martins Act bicentenary anniversary conference. And also, if you want any more information about the work that I do at Viva, you can go to vivafarming.org.uk. It's just a reminder that we all care about animals, but we all need food, and we all need to bring farmers into this. And veganic farming is the way forward, and just to spread that word. And yeah, it's been great, and it's been wonderful speaking to you all this evening. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kerri.
Thank you.
Thank you.